Project manager, team leader, operations coordinator, HR manager, financial controller. If you are any one of these, there is bad news for you. You are on the AI hit list. There is no way to sugarcoat this. You right now are in the same position as the dinosaurs were just before that mega asteroid hit the earth and drove them to complete extinction. We are now at the cusp of a massive middle management meltdown across the world. And it is already unfolding and will keep increasing over the next couple of years. And it's happening because companies all over the world, including here in India, are blindly racing to adopt AI, driven by a FOMO, a fear of missing out on the intoxicating promise of cutting costs. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, stick around. The numbers I'm about to show you, the evidence I'm about to lay out for you will not just change your mind, it might just change the way in which you view your entire career that's ahead. Let's start with a chilling forecast from the advisory firm Gartner. They predict that by 2026, that is by the end of next year, 1 in 5, that is 20% of all companies will use AI to get rid of more than half of their middle managers. Now keep this in mind, Gartner is a company that corporations pay millions of dollars to for advice on technology and strategy. When they speak, CEOs listen. Their predictions are usually also advice given to corporates. So they are, in a sense, often self-fulfilling prophecies. Now for forecast number 2, McKinsey. Again, when you hear this number, keep in mind that McKinsey is the world's foremost, the biggest management consulting firm. It is the high priest of corporate strategy. And McKinsey predicts that 49%, just a shade below half of all management tasks, face the risk of automation. Let's be realistic here. When McKinsey predicts something like this, it's because they are actively advising their clients to do it, right? I can bet that management consultants from various big companies are walking into the offices of the Fortune 500 and the Nifty 50 companies and telling CEOs that the fastest, most effective way to become AI ready is to streamline operations by firing an entire layer of middle managers. They are selling a vision of a leaner, meaner and more profitable company, and that vision unfortunately doesn't include you. Let's get to the forecast number 3, and this one comes from one of Europe's biggest consultancy firms, Bearing Point. Okay, they predict 24% of all management jobs will become fully automated. There will be no need for human intervention at all. Another 19% they predict will be augmented by AI, which effectively means one person would be able to do the work of 3 to 4 people using AI as an assistant. That adds up to 43% of a manager's job, either done entirely by AI or so heavily assisted by it that the human manager's role reduces drastically, probably just to a supervisory role. Whichever way you spin it, the conclusion is the same. Fewer managers are going to be needed in the very near future, far fewer than we have right now. Many of you watching probably think this is just fear-mongering, as I said. You are probably telling yourself, my job is too complex, it requires that special human touch, emotional intelligence, it needs strategic thinking. I fear that you might just be in denial. And there are 2 reasons to believe that. First is that AI can break down things that we consider to be entirely human and then recreate them to implement them on their own. AI platforms are now capable of very high-level analysis, prediction, and even some amount of creative problem solving. The second reason, and probably bigger, is that companies are much more focused on cost cutting now than on providing customer satisfaction. So just because AI might not produce the same quality that you as a human manager can, does not mean that your bosses won't replace you with AI, right? AI is simply much cheaper than you, much faster than you, and the drop in quality is marginal in most cases. If you still think that you're safe, watch till the end. I will tell you what the experts are saying, exactly which roles are likely to be on the chopping block. So here's how this video will unfold. First, we'll quickly define what a middle manager actually does, because to understand the threat, we need to understand the role, right? Second, a brief look at the history of why your job even exists. It's a more recent invention than you actually believe. Third, and this is the crucial part that you must watch, we will do a deep dive to identify the specific managerial tasks that are most likely to be taken over by AI. In fact, in many cases are already being taken over. And finally, we will run the numbers. How many jobs are truly at risk, both globally and right here in India? The scale of this disruption is so massive that we all need to be prepared for it. So let's begin by understanding who exactly is a middle manager. Forget the corporate jargon of synergies, deliverables, KRAs, career path and all that. A middle manager is ultimately the human glue holding a company together. Now think of a typical office, perhaps yours, right? Senior management sit in their glass offices and congregate in boardrooms, creating the grand strategy for future. They talk about market penetration, 5-year plans, business development, increasing shareholder value, and so on. Out on the main floor, you have the frontline employees, the coders writing the software, the sales reps making the calls, the junior accountant compiling the financial numbers and data, or even the factory workers operating the machinery on the shop floor. They are the ones who do the actual tangible work. And what about the middle manager? They are stuck in the middle. They are the essential and until now the irreplaceable translator of information from both sides. They take the vague high-level strategy from the top and break it down into actual achievable tasks. They have to coordinate workflows between different teams, allocate resources, set deadlines, and assign those tasks to the workers directly. They are the ones who turn a CEO's dream into an actual project plan. Then they have to do the exact reverse. They monitor the workers, they track their performance against all those wonderful KPIs, right? Or key performance indicators. Middle managers collect, collate, and analyze that data, and then they compile it into a shiny, easy to digest report to send back up the chain of command to the top managers, and so that the top managers can feel confident that their grand strategy is on track. If you are a middle manager, then you are the one who gets that 11 p.m. WhatsApp message from the boss, either with a brilliant new idea that has to be implemented right now, or with an angry reprimand as to why something hasn't been done yet. And then you're the one who has to ruin a junior's morning with it, load them with even more work than they have. You're the one who has to tell a fresher, यार कितनी कॉफी पियोगे, काम अपने आप हो जाएगा क्या? And then you're the one who has to stand in a meeting and justify why a deadline was missed, taking the heat from above to shield your team below. It's a thankless, stressful job where you are often seen as a killjoy by your juniors for pushing them to meet targets and giving them a lot of work. And at the same time, you constantly face the pressure and scrutiny from your bosses when things go wrong, right? The data actually backs this up. I will quote one study here from Columbia University, which showed that middle managers have a 50% higher incidence of depression than the people they supervise. And they're twice as likely to suffer from serious anxiety-related problems. Middle managers are the shock absorbers of the corporate world, who do the mundane and sometimes very tedious and repetitive work that the top bosses don't want to do, so they delegate it to middle managers. But has this job, this specific role of being the human conduit, always existed? No, it hasn't. If you're not interested in the history, feel free to use the chapter markers to jump ahead to the part where I talk about the specifics of the roles AI will affect, right? For everyone else who's interested in this, this context is crucial to understanding why middle managers are so vulnerable right now. All right. 100 years ago, these jobs simply didn't exist. Companies were simpler and smaller structures, often run directly by their owners, who knew their workers personally, by name. In the 1930s, for instance, the professional managerial class of white-collar workers, which is management, was just a tiny sliver of the workforce, just about 1% in the US. After World War II, companies became bigger and more managers began to be hired. But even then, the pace of growth was much slower than what was happening in the government sector or the public sector, right? The 1940s, 50s and 60s were periods when governments intervened much more aggressively in the economy, in regulating the private sector, and also in building welfare systems across the world. So a large number of college-educated middle-class people went into government service, either to be bureaucrats or to run the public sector directly. From the 1980s, the rise of neoliberalism meant that the government withdrew gradually from every sphere actually, and the private sector expanded dramatically, replacing the government in many parts. If you're interested in knowing more about this, I'll put a link in the description to one of my videos on this subject. You can watch that later on. So, as private companies became more important, a new problem emerged, that of scale, right? Companies were suddenly global with complex supply chains, massive workforces, and intricate multi-layered operations. Private companies were also increasingly taking over roles that governments had earlier. For instance, like managing utilities, like electricity, water, gas supplies, telephone communications, and also education and healthcare. So, where earlier a typical owner along with their partner and family members could easily run and oversee a business, now they needed an entire army of managers to do that work. And this is where the middle managers started rising. Just as the post-war state had given rise to a massive body of government administrators, the expansion of the private sector gave rise to a large pool of corporate administrators. Please note, I am using the word administrator instead of manager here. Think about it. What is an MBA? A master's in business administration, which produces managers. So manager is essentially a corporate bureaucrat, a private sector babu. The key difference here is that a bureaucrat's job is to maximize the rule of the state. A manager's job is to maximize profit for the company they work for. That's the crucial difference. Otherwise, the work is more or less the same. We can get a sense of how this managerial class expanded from the 1980s from the employment numbers in the USA. Management jobs jumped from being 23% of the American workforce in 1980 to a staggering 38% by 2023. A similar story unfolded in India, especially after the economic reforms of 1991. As the private sector boomed, it needed people to manage that boom. The Indian middle class, as we know it now, was largely built on the back of this new managerial class that expanded in the 90s onwards. But here is the brutal, inescapable irony. The very functions that managers were hired to perform, the coordinating, the monitoring, the reporting, the translating of information up and down the corporate ladder, these are the exact functions that modern AI agents are built to do. Only it does them faster with perfect accuracy, 24 hours a day, and most importantly, AI does it for a fraction of the cost of your salary. So let's get specific. Which parts of your job are being automated away as we speak? First, let's talk about the core function of management, which is general management. The role of being an information conduit, tracking progress, compiling reports, scheduling meetings, communicating updates. This is ground zero for AI disruption. Modern AI-powered dashboard tools like Tableau or Power BI integrated with machine learning give senior managers a real-time granular view of every single KPI in the organization. They no longer need a middle manager to spend a week gathering data and put it into a PowerPoint deck for them, right? They can now just look at the dashboard constantly and monitor. They can ask the AI a very straightforward question in plain English, like what was our sales growth in the northern region last quarter compared to the one before that? And the AI agent will give an instant, accurate answer. The general manager job is gradually being dismantled and being replaced by a direct data pipeline from senior managers to the worker and then back up the chain. Second, let's look at project management. And if you're a project manager, you need to pay close attention here. There's an entire ecosystem of AI-powered tools now like Asana AI or ClickUp AI, which is systematically automating the entire administrative side of project management. These are sold as tools to help you with managing a project, but in reality, they are increasingly being used by companies to manage the entire project on their own with some rudimentary supervision. These AI agents can take a simple project goal, break it down into proper workflow charts, assign tasks to team members based on their skills and availability, automatically schedule every step and track progress in real time. They can monitor budgets, flag potential overruns before they happen, and even predict risk by analyzing data from thousands of previous projects. They are in many ways becoming better project managers than humans. They're devoid of bias, devoid of emotion, and they don't need to sleep. So this is what is happening to project management. Third on our list is human resources, or HR. The rate of AI adoption in HR is actually staggering. Gartner reports that in mid-2023, only 19% of HR heads were using generative AI in their departments. By early 2025, that number shot up to 61%. That is tripling in 1.5 years. AI can now screen thousands of resumes in minutes and rank candidates, frankly, far more objectively than a human recruiter ever could. It can manage the entire onboarding process for new hires, handle payroll and leave, and even power internal help desks. Take the case of IBM. Their internal Ask HR AI tool saved an incredible 12,000 hours of work in a single quarter, in just one department. That is equal to the hours that 24 full-time employees work in a quarter. An algorithm is effectively making 24 employees completely obsolete. Fourth, let's look at marketing management. According to some surveys, 70% of US marketers are already using generative AI for tasks like writing ad copy, creating social media content, and drafting email campaigns. But it goes much deeper. AI now automates complex data collection, optimizes ad spending in real time with a precision no human actually can match. AI agents perform sophisticated customer segmentation to personalize marketing at a scale that humans cannot do. The consulting firm Deloitte, for instance, estimates that AI can cut down the time spent on repetitive data-driven tasks that marketing managers have to do by as much as 40%. But till now, senior marketing managers in marketing departments handed over this tedious work to middle managers. Now ask yourself, honestly, if a large chunk of a middle manager's job in marketing is gone, is that job really safe? Finally, let's bundle finance and customer service together, since automation in both these places has a similarity. In finance, roles like bookkeepers, accounts managers, and junior financial analysts are vanishing at a rapid pace. AI can already perform data entry, bank reconciliation, and invoice processing pretty flawlessly. It can even draft the first level commentary on financial reports, highlighting trends and anomalies for a senior analyst to review. And in customer service, well, you've all experienced the rise of chatbots, sometimes very annoying. But you might not see is that the bots have replaced entire teams of customer service agents. And if the team doesn't exist any longer, you certainly don't need a manager to lead it, right? So what's the final tally? When we add all of this up, how many people are we actually talking about? Now, there are no clear predictions available, so we can only make informed guesses here. Let's take the case of the United States first. The Harvard Business Review estimated in 2022 that about 13% of the US workforce was middle management. If AI, as predicted, makes just 1/3 of them redundant over the next 5 years, that's a staggering 7 million American professionals out of a job. What about here in India? Again, the data is even less clear here. So here's another guesstimate. The top 500 companies in this country employ about 8.4 million people, that is 84 lakh people. If we assume that the proportion of middle managers amongst these is similar to the USA, then the biggest 500 companies in India employ about 1 million or 10 lakh well-paid middle managers. I'm not talking about entry-level white-collar workers. These are the people who form the very core of our urban middle class. They are the engine of consumption, the buyers of cars and apartments, the aspirational class that has powered India's growth story since the 1990s. If 1/3 of them lose their jobs in the next few years, that's over 3 lakh people. And more importantly, that's 3 lakh families suddenly thrown into a state of financial panic, struggling with EMIs, rent, and school fees. This is not just a statistic, it's a human tragedy already unfolding in slow motion across our cities. And no one is talking about it. What is even worse is the dehumanization that this will bring. Everyone will be at each other's throat for survival. The pressure will be immense. You'll be expected to do the work that 5 people used to do earlier, supported not by human beings, human teams, but by AI agents. You'll be expected to work 14-hour days. We have already seen some great names of business calling for it, right? And there will be no corresponding pay hikes. Why? Because if you don't accept these new terms, there will be 3 lakh other desperate skilled professionals waiting in the wings, willing to take your job for less money. It's a race to the bottom, where the winners are the corporations and the losers are the professionals who built them and held them together like glue. This brings us to the big question, the one we all need to start debating, asking, should government step in? Is it time for a serious conversation about regulations? Maybe even an AI tax on companies that replace human jobs with automation. Is it the responsibility of the individual to adapt, to upskill, to constantly reinvent themselves in a brutal competition against a machine that never sleeps? This AI upskilling, actually I am already doing it, by the way, and I put out a video recently on how I'm using it to stay ahead of AI itself. Let me know what you think in the comments, and do read what others are writing in the comments as well, and join the debate, because let's make this channel a true community space of solidarity. Finally, before I go, if this video gave you something to think about, then hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next on this channel. Until next time, stay informed.